The hiss of plasma rounds tore the silence apart. Ava McAllister ducked low behind a splintered tree stump, her heart hammering in her ears. Smoke drifted from the ruins of her cabin, once her sanctuary, now a blackened skeleton framed against the blood-red twilight of New Vancouver's twin moons. Boots crunched through the ash. Heavy. Methodical. Alien. She tightened her grip on the hunting knife hidden beneath her torn jacket. Not much use against Dominion shock troopers, but it made her feel less naked. Her pulse slowed. Focus. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Stand, human! A guttural voice barked. Ava rose slowly, knife sliding discreetly into her boot. 5 soldiers in iridescent armor circled her. Their leader, taller and broader than the others, approached, his violet skin glistening under the moon's sickly light. Commander Vrex Tarn. She knew his face from the Resistance files, ruthless, cruel, obsessed with breaking enemies through humiliation. He had flattened 3 frontier towns already. New Vancouver was supposed to be next. He looked at her like one might look at a stubborn insect. His lipless mouth twisted in amusement. A female? He said, chuckling. They send this to defend a colony? The others laughed, the sound metallic through their helmets. Ava said nothing, jaw tight, eyes locked on Vrex. He circled her, inspecting her like a merchant examining defective goods. Fragile. Soft. He sneered. You build homes from sticks and hopes. You cling to wilderness like animals. Ava's fingers itched for the knife, but she forced her hands to hang loose. Bide your time. Let them think you're broken. Vrex stopped in front of her, towering over her slight frame. He gestured, and a soldier shoved her forward. She stumbled but stayed upright. I admire one thing, Vrex said, voice thick with mockery. Human spirit. Like a candle in a hurricane. Flickering, futile. He turned to his soldiers. Watch closely. This is the fate of Earthkind. 2 grabbed her arms. Vrex pulled a ceremonial blade from his belt, its surface humming faintly. Ava's stomach twisted, not with fear, but rage. He sliced the Canadian flag patch from her jacket, letting it flutter to the mud. Symbols, Vrex said. Another human weakness. Ava's blood roared in her ears, but she stared back, unblinking. Silent. Vrex leaned in close, his breath hot and foul. No shame in kneeling, human. Bow, and I might spare your miserable hide. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then Ava smiled, a small, savage thing. I'd rather die on my feet, she said, voice hoarse but steady. The alien's amusement faltered, if only for a second. Around them, the soldiers shuffled, unsure. Vrex recovered quickly, smirking. He flicked the blade across her cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. So be it. He shoved her hard into the mud. The soldiers roared with laughter as she fell, smearing ash and blood across her face. She lay still for a moment, seething. Counting breaths. 1, 2, 3. Her boot pressed deeper into the soft earth, and felt something. A shallow depression, maybe an old root hollow. Her fingers twitched. Opportunity. Above her, Vrex turned away, barking orders to set up a forward camp. The soldiers relaxed, confident the human was broken. Ava rose slowly, hunched, playing the part of the defeated. A guard shoved her again, harder this time. Move, worm! He hissed. She stumbled toward the camp perimeter, toward the weakness she'd noticed earlier. The plasma fences weren't fully deployed yet. They depended on speed, fear, chaos to control prisoners. She glanced sideways. A gap, 2 meters wide, near the comms relay. No sentry in sight yet. 2 meters could be a world away, or salvation. Ava's heart slammed against her ribs. Not yet. Not yet. Vrex raised a hand, addressing the gathered troops. Today, we remind the stars why Earth is a footnote in history. Cheers erupted. Blasters raised. Ava moved. In one fluid motion, she slammed her elbow into the guard's midsection, spinning low to the ground. His breath whooshed out. He dropped his rifle. She snatched it as she rolled, firing a single shot, wide, into the trees, to create confusion. Shouts. Curses. Chaos. She bolted for the gap. Plasma rounds seared past her. Heat kissed her neck. She zigzagged, boots slipping on blood-slick mud, lungs burning. A stun bolt clipped her shoulder. Pain blossomed sharp and immediate, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. Through the fence. Into the trees. Into the dark. Ava didn't stop until the campfires were no more than angry stars behind her. When she finally collapsed beside a twisted oak, chest heaving, she allowed herself a bitter laugh. Soft? Fragile? They had no idea what a human woman could survive. And tomorrow, they'd learn what she could do. Ava woke to the rasp of her own breathing, lungs aching as if the trees themselves were pressing down on her. Dawn bled pale light through the skeletal branches, and mist coiled around the ground like living things. She flexed her fingers, every joint protested. Her right shoulder throbbed from the stun bolt. Her jacket was torn, her boots caked with mud and blood, but she was alive. Alive, and free. The Dominion soldiers would be hunting her by now, fanning out through the forest with their scanners and plasma rifles. But New Vancouver's wilderness wasn't theirs. It was hers. She pulled herself upright against a thick, gnarled tree, scanning the dense undergrowth. No movement. No distant shouts. Only the mournful calls of native birds overhead. Ava allowed herself a breath, a real one, deep and grounding. Then she started moving. Low and fast, she picked her way through the tangled underbrush, every step deliberate. Dominion patrols would rely on brute force and technology. She would rely on patience, and the forest. After a few kilometers, she found a hollow beneath the roots of a massive ironwood tree. It was just deep enough for shelter. She crawled inside, teeth gritted against the pane, and took inventory. Knife. Broken rifle, no good without a power cell. A few shards of plasma-fused glass, sharp as razors. A fire starter half dead from moisture. She exhaled slowly. Not much to work with, but it would have to be enough. First priority, weapons. She tore strips from her ruined jacket and fashioned crude bindings. A fallen branch became a spear, tipped with a shard of glass lashed tight. Not elegant, but it would puncture armor joints as she struck true. She collected stones for traps, sharpened sticks for punji pits. As she worked, her mind settled into the old rhythm, the one she had lived in the frozen backcountry of northern Ontario during survival drills. The one that had kept her alive in Black Ops deployments nobody would ever read about. Outlast. Outthink. I'll fight, she muttered under her breath, like a prayer. The Dominion didn't know it yet, but they hadn't captured a settler. They had provoked a predator. By midday, Ava had a rudimentary kill zone mapped out, a place where thick vines and unstable ground could be turned to her advantage. She camouflaged the pit traps with wet leaves, marked escape routes with subtle notches in tree trunks. As she knotted the last snare, a memory surfaced unbidden, her father's voice, warm and amused. If you ever find yourself cornered, girl, remember, wolves don't fight fair. They don't ask permission. They bite first. A smile ghosted her lips. She missed him fiercely. She rose, flexing her bruised limbs. Her traps were set. Her weapons crude but deadly. Now she needed to draw the enemy in. Her hand brushed the inside pocket of her jacket, and froze. The Canadian flag patch. Torn, dirted, but intact. Ava traced its edges with calloused fingers. Rage burned fresh and sharp in her chest. They thought they could rip her identity away. Reduce her to a footnote. Not today. She pinned the patch to the front of her makeshift vest, a defiant splash of color against the grime. Let them see it when she took them down. The first sign of pursuit came with the low hum of a Dominion skimmer overhead, its anti-grav engine stirring leaves into eddies. Ava crouched beneath a fallen log, heart steady. Two soldiers moved through the trees, scanning methodically. Their armor gleamed, clean and alien against the wildness. Human tracks, one said in a guttural accent, gesturing toward a muddy slope. She's close. Ava tensed, counting their steps. 5 meters. 4. Now. She snapped the nearest snare. A whip-thin vine snapped tight around one soldier's ankle, yanking him off his feet. He hit the ground hard, his helmet slamming into a rock with a crunch. The second soldier spun, weapon raised. Ava exploded from cover, driving her glass-tipped spear into the gap between his chest plate and shoulder guard. He screamed, twisting, but she ripped the spear free and drove it again, faster, harder. Blood, greenish-black, spurted out in a hot arc. The first soldier was struggling up, dazed. Ava didn't hesitate. She seized a fist-sized stone and brought it down with a wet crack. Silence reclaimed the forest. Ava wiped the blood from her hands mechanically, forcing herself not to think. Thinking could come later. Survival was now. She stripped the bodies quickly: power cells, a working plasma knife, a canteen of stale water. One of the rifles was intact, but keyed to Dominion biometrics. Useless for her, unless she could hack it. Still, the plasma knife buzzed reassuringly in her grip. Better armed. Better odds. She retreated deeper into the woods before nightfall, muscles burning with exhaustion but refusing to quit. She chose a hidden rise overlooking the faint glow of the Dominion camp in the valley below. Squatting among the ferns, she watched them. Watched him. Rex Tarn stalked the perimeter, shouting at underlings, fury etched in every line of his massive frame. Search parties streamed outward, clumsy and impatient. They weren't used to being hunted. Ava sat in the darkness, silent and invisible, the flag patch warm against her chest. They had burned her home. Mocked her people. Laughed at her pain. Tomorrow, they would choke on it. She leaned back against the trunk, savoring the ache in her muscles, the ache that meant she was still alive, still fighting. Above her, the stars shimmered cold and distant. Below her, the hunters fumbled blindly in the dark. Ava closed her eyes, lips curling into a grim smile. Let the hunt begin. The rain came at dawn, a cold, relentless drizzle that turned the forest floor into a sucking mire. Ava welcomed it. Rain masked tracks, dulled scents, blurred out lines. It would slow the Dominion patrols, if not stop them outright. She hunkered under a heavy canopy of leaves, inspecting the Dominion rifle again. Biometrics. Locked tight. No way to bypass it without proper tools, and she had none. She shoved it aside and focused on her plasma knife. Charged, deadly, silent. Perfect. Movement to the east caught her eye, a Dominion patrol, 5 strong, moving in loose formation. Sloppy. Arrogant. They were tired. Nervous. Good. She watched their advance with a predator's patience, every muscle still. They followed the path she had baited the night before, boot prints deliberately pressed into mud, snapped branches, a discarded scrap of fabric. Bait for the trap. Ava moved parallel, silent as the mist, leading them into the kill zone she had prepared near the ravine edge. The ground there was treacherous, loose soil, hidden roots, sudden drops. The patrol reached the clearing. Their leader raised a hand, scanning the ground. Tracks end here, he said, voice crackling over their comms. A younger soldier muttered, Maybe she fell into the ravine. The leader snorted. Humans aren't that lucky. Ava crouched 20 meters away, heart pounding a slow, deliberate beat. She counted down under her breath. 3, 2, 1. She hurled a stone into the undergrowth behind them. The soldiers spun, weapons raised, attention fractured. She struck. Ava lunged from cover, plasma knife flashing. The rear guard barely had time to scream before she drove the blade into his spine between armor plates. His body spasmed once and went still. The others whipped around, confusion flaring into panic. Ava dove low, slashing the legs of the nearest soldier. He toppled, firing wildly into the trees, plasma bolts searing harmlessly past. She's here! Someone shouted, but too late. She rolled up behind the third soldier, wrenched his helmet aside, and rammed the knife into the exposed gap under his jaw. Hot alien blood sprayed her hands. The leader roared, rallying. 2 soldiers regrouped, forming a defensive line. Ava didn't give them time to recover. She hurled herself at them, a whirlwind of savage fury, using speed and surprise to overwhelm their superior strength. She slashed the leader across the thigh, dodged a retaliatory blow, and shoved him toward the ravine edge. The ground gave way beneath him. His scream echoed once before cutting off sharply. The last soldier hesitated, backing away, weapon trembling in his hands. Ava pointed her blood-slick blade at him. "Go," she said. He bolted, crashing through the undergrowth, leaving the dead behind. Ava wiped the rain from her face, breathing hard but steady. Pain lanced up her injured shoulder, but she ignored it. Pain meant nothing. Pain was proof of life. She rifled through the fallen soldier's gear, pocketing a fresh comm unit and a ration bar. One of them carried a small beacon, short range, used for signaling extraction teams. An idea took root, dark and satisfying. She clipped the beacon to a branch, toggled it to active, and set it broadcasting. Within minutes, Dominion reinforcements would swarm to this spot, expecting survivors. Instead, they'd find their dead, and a message. Using a shard of plasma-fused glass, Ava scratched crude letters into the bark of a nearby tree. The Dominion soldiers didn't read English, but they would recognize the shape. Recognize defiance. A single word. Run! By mid-afternoon, Ava was back in the high ground, watching through a tangle of ferns as Dominion skimmers buzzed the clearing below. Soldiers fanned out cautiously, rifles sweeping in tight arcs. Rex Tarn stood among them, face thunderous. He barked orders, gesturing violently at the bodies, the scrawled message. Ava smiled grimly. She wasn't just a fugitive anymore. She was an enemy. A threat. A ghost slipping through their fingers. She tapped the side of the stolen comm unit, listening to the fragmented transmissions. "Lost contact with Echo Squad. She's hunting us. Commander Tarn orders all units to double perimeter patrols." The fear in their voices was unmistakable. Good. She leaned back against the damp earth, resting for a few precious minutes. Her muscles trembled from exhaustion, her body crying for rest, food, warmth. She allowed herself a sip of stale water and a bite of the ration bar, grimacing at the chemical taste. No time for comfort. Rex Tarn would be furious. Pride wounded, ego bruised. He would tighten his grip on the remaining troops, push them harder. Desperation made mistakes inevitable. She would be there to exploit everyone. Night fell like a hammer, heavy and absolute. Clouds smothered the moons. Ava moved through the darkness with the ease of long practice, senses keyed to every sound, every shift in the air. She didn't strike again that night. Instead, she stalked the outer edges of the Dominion camp, mapping its defenses. Watching. Learning. They had tightened security, new sentry posts, doubled watches. Searchlights pierced the gloom. Drones hovered overhead, scanning endlessly. But they had also grown tense. Tired. Restless. She heard arguments among the guards. Saw hands shaking as they fumbled with equipment. Fear gnawed at them, quiet and corrosive. Rex Tarn prowled the perimeter, barking insults, striking subordinates for perceived failures. Cracks in the armor. Ava crouched in the shadows, silent and patient, the flag patch over her heart like a brand. They had thought they were invincible. Tomorrow, she would remind them. No empire, no army, no alien monster could match the fury of a human stripped of everything, and still standing. The Dominion camp pulsed like a wounded beast beneath the night sky, a patchwork of flickering fires and erratic patrols. Ava crouched on a rocky outcrop, surveying the chaos she'd sown. Every light, every hurried shout, was proof they feared her now. Good. Tonight wouldn't be another skirmish. Tonight would be a warning. Ava slipped away from her perch, moving through the undergrowth like a shadow. She carried only the essentials: plasma knife, salvaged stun grenades, rope, and a crude satchel of toxic berries and resin she'd harvested from the forest. Poison was a language they would understand. She struck first at the supply depot. The guards posted there were weary, slouching against their rifles. She watched from the treeline as they rotated shifts, noticing the momentary gaps, the lazy habits bred from long hours and fear. Timing it precisely, she crept behind the depot's rear tent. Her fingers worked quickly, slashing open containers and slipping handfuls of resinous toxin into their ration packs. Not enough to kill instantly, too obvious, but enough to sicken, to sap strength, to unravel discipline. Before retreating, she jammed a stun grenade into a fuel drum and wired it to the storage door. The message was clear, even their supplies were tainted. As she slipped back into the forest, a single thought anchored her. Break their bodies. Break their minds. Hours later, from her vantage point, Ava watched the effect ripple outward. Soldiers doubled over, vomiting into the mud. Some collapsed outright, groaning and clutching their guts. Medical officers scrambled, overwhelmed. The skimmers, sleek machines of war, sat idle. The patrols thinned. Rex Tarn's voice crackled over the comms she had stolen, sharp with fury. Lock down all sectors! No one leaves without my order! Too late. She was already inside the perimeter. Near the command tent, she set her next trap. Using the stolen comm unit, Ava broadcast a ghost signal, an emergency distress call in Dominion frequencies, drawing squads away from the central camp into the misty woods. They scrambled to respond, fracturing their strength even further. She moved with lethal purpose, setting snare lines between trees, tipping unstable branches into traps, creating kill pockets where confusion would do the work for her. Every motion was practiced, efficient, inevitable. The Dominion soldiers weren't just fighting an enemy anymore. They were fighting the land itself, and losing. Toward midnight, as the rain deepened into a cold, stinging mist, Ava made her boldest move yet. She stalked the outer watchtower, a flimsy structure of steel and plasteel meant for overwatch. One sentry guarded it now, a hulking figure bored into complacency. Ava approached slow and fast, using the muddy terrain to mask her steps. She scaled the rear support beam without a sound, plasma knife clenched in her teeth. As the sentry shifted his weight, she struck, an upward slash under the arm where the armor was weakest. He dropped without a sound, eyes wide in shock. Ava caught his rifle before it hit the floor. She crouched beside his body, whispering into his helmet's comms in broken Dominion tongue. Your gods are dead. Run! She left the body propped against the rail, staring blankly into the woods. A message. When the next shift arrived, they would find it, and they would understand. Down in the main camp, Vrextarn seethed, pacing like a caged animal. His second-in-command, a wiry alien with sunken eyes, tried to rally the troops, but morale bled out faster than orders could be given. Ava could hear it in their voices, rising panic, sharp arguments, thinly veiled terror. She slipped back into the treeline, her work for the night done. Not a single wasted move. Not a single wasted breath. Only results. At dawn, she circled back to observe. The camp looked like a battlefield even before a true fight began. Soldiers stumbled, faces gray with sickness. Barricades were half assembled, supplies abandoned in the mud. And Vrextarn? He stood in the center of the ruins, armor splattered with rain and blood, teeth bared in a silent snarl. His pride was a brittle thing now, one more strike from shattering completely. Ava knelt among the ferns, exhaustion gnawing at her bones, but satisfaction warming her chest. She had turned their might into weakness. She had become their ghost, their nightmare, their shame. She touched the flag patch pinned to her chest, tracing the edges with slow, deliberate fingers. For her home. For the fallen. For every human who had ever been called weak and made them regret it. As she slipped back into the deep woods, already planning her next move, the forest swallowed her whole. No songs of victory. No banners waving. Only a whisper through the mist, carried on the cold dawn wind. The hunt isn't over. Not until Vrextarn fell. And she would be the one to bring him down. The forest stood silent at dusk, a thousand shadows deepening with the falling light. Mist clung low to the ground, curling around roots and broken stones. Somewhere below, in the heart of the camp, Vrextarn prepared for battle. Ava tightened the straps of her vest, the stolen plasma knife humming faintly against her hip. Every cut, Every bruise, every ache in her body had led to this moment. Tonight wasn't survival. It was justice. She moved through the undergrowth, silent and deliberate. The Dominion camp was half deserted now, soldiers deserting, skimmers abandoned, discipline shredded beyond repair. Only Vrex and a handful of the fanatical remained. He wouldn't run. She was counting on it. At the camp's center, Vrextarn stood alone, armor gleaming like a wound in the gloom. His helmet lay discarded at his feet, revealing the heavy ridges of his forehead, the set lines of his jaw. His plasma blade rested against his shoulder, pulsing with deadly light. He was waiting. Ava emerged from the tree-line, stepped slow, deliberate, flag patch pinned proudly to her chest. Their eyes met across the mud and ruin. "You!" Brex snarled, voice rough with rage. "The animal that gnaws in the dark." Ava tilted her head, unafraid. "Funny," she said. "I was about to say the same about you." Vrex laughed, short and sharp. "You think you can face me? One broken human against a commander of the Dominion?" Ava smiled, a thin, cold thing. "I'm not here to face you," she said. "I'm here to end you." Without another word, she charged. Vrex met her head on, swinging his plasma blade in a wide arc meant to cut her in two. Ava ducked low, the heat of the blade searing the air above her head. She slashed at his exposed side, but his armor turned the blade, sparks showering into the mud. He kicked, a brutal sweep that caught her in the ribs. Pain exploded through her chest, but she rolled with it, coming up fast, stabbing for the gap under his arm. He caught her wrist, squeezing until her bones creaked. "You are nothing," he hissed, yanking her closer. "Just a whisper in history." She wrenched her knee up into his groin. Alien physiology, or not, it staggered him enough for her to break free. "Whispers," she gasped, circling. "Bring empires down." Vrex roared, charging. Ava sidestepped, slashing his thigh as he passed. Blood, thick and black, splattered the mud. Vrex stumbled, growling in pain, but his blade lashed out faster, angrier. Ava barely dodged the next strike, the heat singing the edge of her jacket. Her body screamed for rest, for relief, but she ignored it. She had one advantage: she could endure. He was bleeding, slowing, weighed down by pride and anger. She was air. She was ice. They fought through the ruins of the camp, over shattered tents, past flickering fires. Every breath was a battle. Every second a razor's edge. Vrex swung high. Ava darted under, jabbing at the weakened armor over his ribs. He howled, backhanding her hard enough to send her sprawling. Mud filled her mouth. Stars burst behind her eyes. But when she looked up, Vrex was limping, breathing raggedly, favoring his left side. She forced herself to her feet. He pointed his blade at her. "Yield," he rasped. "You have fought well for a savage." Ava spat blood onto the ground. "You haven't seen savage yet." Summoning the last reserves of her strength, she charged. Vrex swung wide, too slow. She slid under his guard, driving the plasma knife deep into the vulnerable seam of his armor at the hip. He screamed, staggering back, blade flailing wildly. Ava didn't give him a chance to recover. She tore the knife free and plunged it into the exposed joint at his neck, twisting hard. Vrex shuddered, the strength draining from his massive frame. He dropped to his knees, eyes wild with disbelief. "You!" he gasped, voice barely a whisper. Ava knelt in front of him, locking his fading gaze with hers. "We're not soft," she said, voice cold and steady. "We're relentless." She yanked the knife free. Vrextarn collapsed into the mud, still and broken. The forest around her seemed to exhale, the tension of days bleeding into the earth. Ava rose slowly, battered and bleeding, but standing. Always standing. She dragged Vrex's body toward the central flagpole where the Dominion had once flown their banner high. She stripped the bloody Dominion insignia from the pole and, in its place, tied her Canadian flag patch, small, battered but proud. It flapped weakly in the rain, a stubborn splash of color against the ash-gray sky. Ava stepped back, surveying her work. This was no longer a camp. It was a graveyard. A warning. To every Dominion captain dreaming of conquest. To every empire that thought humanity was weak. To every soldier who ever mocked a human woman standing alone. By the time the sun broke through the mist, Ava had vanished back into the trees. No songs. No medals. No crowds. Only the silent promise whispered through the wilds. Never again.